Thank you everyone for joining us. My name is Sonia Santos. I am an academic advisor here for the College of Natural Sciences and Mathematics, and I'm also the Thrive Events Coordinator. So like we were saying, you get my emails promoting all the events that we have for the college. And today we have an incredible lineup of, professionals that are out in the fields that you might be interested in, or even if you're not sure, I think this is a perfect place to be. I do want to go over some housekeeping items before we go any further. Let me share my screen real quick. Okay, so today's session is on a webinar format. So that means that your video and your microphone are disabled. You are able to communicate with us via the Q&A feature that you have there at the bottom of your screen. We will also use the chat feature to drop any links, any resources that are mentioned throughout the panel. This is being recorded, and it is so that we can share it with the world once we're all done. So just give us about 2 weeks for us to get the transcribing done, and we will put it up in the Thrive events website. So to get to Thrive, just Google CSULB, CNSM, Thrive. It'll take you there, or I have a QR code on the screen. We do have other events that are coming up. If some of you are juniors, seniors thinking about grad school, in April, we are going to be having a workshop put together by the Graduate Center, and we're actually going to go to the library, and you're going to get a tour of the center by one of the directors. And so don't miss that. Don't miss my announcements. Okay, so I'm going to go ahead and pass it on to Dr. Bernal now. Take it away.
Awesome. Thanks, Sonia. So again, my name is Dr. Elaine Villanueva Bernal. I'm a lecturer in the Department of Chemistry and Biochemistry. My pronouns are she and they, and I have the lovely pleasure of moderating this panel with some of our awesome alumni. Just to get us started, and this is for the entire panel, please tell us about yourself. So the school attended, degrees, company, and job title. So a short description about what you do.
Okay, I'll start. So hi everyone, thanks for joining us. My name is Ayla. I went to Cal State Long Beach for a very long time. I was there for my undergrad, finished that in 2012. I came back to do the biotechnology program, so I got my certificate in biotech from Cal State Long Beach, and then I also did my master's, finished that in 2017 in Deborah Fraser's lab at Long Beach. I have held a few positions in a research environment since then, but I'm currently at Janssen Pharmaceuticals, which is part of Johnson & Johnson, down in San Diego. So I'm an associate scientist in the immunology discovery department, and we primarily focus on investigating therapies for chronic inflammatory conditions, so things like IBD, rheumatoid arthritis, stuff like that. So I'm in a lab-based role working on drug discovery for those conditions.
Thank you for that, Ayla. I'll just go who's next to me. Claire.
Hi everyone, my name is Claire. I went to Cal State Long Beach and got a BS in applied math and a BA in physics, and graduated in 2017. The time's flying by. Right now I am a senior data analyst at Ritual, which is a company that makes supplements. So that's really fun. I worked my way into the data analytics field by starting off in consulting and working my way into e-commerce eventually. And in my role, I provide a lot of support to our product team and our customer lifecycle teams as well, and help them get a good gauge on how the business is doing and help them run A/B tests as well, so we can see how we can make the website perform the best it possibly can.
Awesome. Thanks for that, Claire. Let's go with Natalie.
Hello, I'm Natalie. I graduated from Cal State Long Beach in 2008 with my bachelor's in cell and molecular biology. And then I did a master's at Cal State LA in 2010 in biology. And I am currently working at Kite, a Gilead company in El Segundo. And I'm a senior cell therapy specialist lead. And we do work on CAR T cell therapy. So basically engineering patients' T cells in order to fight their specific cancer.
Thank you, Natalie. Annabelle.
All right, hello everyone. I'm Annabelle Cantu. I graduated from Cal State Long Beach in 2017 with my BS in chemistry. And then I entered a PhD program at UCLA in that fall. And then I ended up leaving my PhD program with my master's from UCLA in chemistry in the spring of 2019. I started working in the industry, specifically in research and development, and I've had a couple roles since then, but currently I am a senior associate scientist with Regeneron, which is based on the East Coast, but my team is very small here in Los Angeles, and what my team is involved in is making or synthesizing cyclic peptides for different therapeutic targets of interest.
Cool. Thank you for that, Annabelle. So we'll go on to our next question, and then we'll start with Annabelle first. What motivated you to go into a science or math field, and what do you do to stay motivated?
All right, great question. I actually avoided taking any science classes in high school until I had to take chemistry my junior year, which is pretty late. And I ended up, everyone absolutely hated chemistry. I absolutely loved it. I thought it was really challenging in a really unique way. And I don't know, I just was fascinated with all the topics, and I pursued that in college at Cal State Long Beach, in which I really changed my ideas of what I wanted to do with chemistry. It changed a lot, probably semester to semester, but I ended up joining a research lab in my second year. I enjoyed it, and then I didn't necessarily like what I was doing, so I joined a new lab after organic chemistry. Absolutely fell in love with research, especially synthetic chemistry. And because I was doing so much research, I just figured, oh, I want to become a professor post-graduation. So to become a professor, you have to have your PhD if you are teaching at a higher or any university besides a community college. So I started my PhD program, ended up, didn't really like the vibe in grad school in terms of how cutthroat it can be at times. It was a little overwhelming for me. I love the research part of it, but I think spending 3 more years in my PhD program just wasn't for me. So I decided to master out, which is the best route for me, definitely. I really love all that I've been able to learn in the pharmaceutical world in terms of research and development. So yeah, what keeps me motivated is really just the perspective of I get to do things on a day-to-day basis that probably no one else in the world gets to do, or gets a view on, I guess you could say. That was the first thing I really liked in the research setting at Cal State Long Beach, was that I was making a molecule no one's ever made before, which is really just a really cool thought. So yeah, that's what keeps me motivated.
Thank you. These atoms make up everything. Okay, let's go to Natalie.
Oh, sorry, I was muted. I guess I found an interest in science, just because like a general one, I want to see how things work, and then I also wanted to enter the field because I wanted to help people. But for me, when I thought about science, at least when I was in school, I feel like most of the time it was okay, go be a doctor. And I was oh, I don't really want to. I want to help people, but not that way, I don't really want to be a medical doctor, so I was oh my God, I don't know what to do now. So I got actually a lucky chance, like when I was in community college, one of my professors brought up Bridges to Baccalaureate at Cal State Long Beach. And so that's how I first got started, like doing research, and like that kind of drove me towards, research, and like, eventually now working at Kite. I fell in love with research. I enjoyed it. I liked working in the lab. I liked having a project, and, that's what I love to do.
Cool. Thank you, Natalie. Let's go with Claire.
So growing up, I don't think I ever really thought of myself as someone that was good at science or math. But I had a few really good teachers in high school, particularly my AP stats teacher was really, really cool. And I think he helped me see that math is about solving problems more than just like memorizing things or like, yeah, I think he made it a lot more fun for me, and really got the whole class involved in solving problems. So I think that's what really helped me get more interested in math, just the idea of problem solving overall. And then throughout college, just working with other people to solve problems, whether we're studying together or hanging out in the satellite room, working on physics problems together. I just really liked that aspect of solving a problem that I had previously thought was impossible for me or hard for me, and coming together with other people and then looking back and saying, oh, that was actually that bad later on. So I think what motivates me now is not only solving harder and harder problems, but finding more efficient ways to solve them. I really enjoyed learning about coding more and more, and I've really enjoyed SQL in particular, and it's just made my life easier so I can answer questions faster and faster. And I think the problem solving aspect, as well as the working with people and communicating what I found and what they think would be best also, I think that's a really fun aspect that I don't know people talk about too much as a motivator for getting into science and math, but I think that's my favorite part.
Cool. Thanks so much. I'm taking notes. I'm like, take all the notes. And then Ayla.
So I guess my original motivation is maybe a little less altruistic than the others. Growing up, I watched a lot of medical dramas. So I thought, I want to be an ER doctor. I was like, that's what I want to do. Seems really exciting. You get to help people. Seems really interesting. In high school, I really enjoyed biology. So I thought, I was on track to do that. But then you get to undergrad, and kind of the reality of the pre-med life and med school life is not as it is on TV. Surprise, surprise. And I worked in hospitals and kind of realized, I don't know if I want to go into medicine, but I do really enjoy biology. So after undergrad, I was a little bit lost, didn't know what direction I wanted to go in, which was my motivation for doing the certificate program, to kind of dip my toes into research environment. And in retrospect, totally made sense, because the lab portion of my coursework was always my favorite part. So I just fell in love with research. And I guess what keeps me motivated is just that the work itself is really engaging. It definitely keeps you on your toes. I think everyone here knows that things in the lab don't always go as planned. So it's just always changing every day. And, of course, the added bonus of being able to help people, even if you're just like a little drop in the ocean of your field of research, is really rewarding to me. So.
Awesome. Thank you for that, Ayla. And then, so the next question is, what was your experience as a student? So if you want to focus on undergrad or grad or both, that's fine. What challenges did you find in your majors or disciplines as you moved towards your career? And how did you overcome these challenges? And for me, what's sticking out right now is that, Claire, you mentioned that you did both physics and math. So I'm curious how did you, that's a lot of math.
It is. It was pretty cool. The applied math program, it's not too much extra work to add on physics BA, which was nice. So like for the applied math program, you pick a focus. I know that there's like the engineering one, and you can choose physics from there. And I think there was an econ one my friend did, and I can't remember if there was more options before, but I think I had to take, it was a while ago. It's amazing how fast things leave your brain. Maybe 3 extra classes or something like that. But yeah, it was a lot of math. I think that I got some really good advice in the beginning. I was paired up with a couple of mentors when I did my, what's it called? When orientation, I could not remember that word for the life of me for a second. When I did my orientation, I got paired up with a couple of people that were a few years older than me that were also in the math program. One of them I'm still really close with. And she told me to spread out my math classes and my physics classes across all 4 years instead of taking all my general ed at once and then all the math classes later. And that was really, really helpful. And I think just being friends with people that were a couple of years ahead of me ended up being really beneficial, so I could get insight about like what classes to take, what professors to get to know. I think the networking I did in undergrad was more helpful than I could have ever imagined. Even just talking to people later after we graduated saying, hey, how do you like this company? Did you like getting a master's degree? That kind of stuff. I didn't even imagine that I would still be keeping in touch with as many people as I still do. And I think it's had a giant impact on my career. And the guidance I got from my professors in my undergrad is extremely valuable. And I think about some of the advice I've gotten still to this day. Let's see. I think that's all I can think of right now in terms of challenges. I think one more thing that I would say is that I think math is a discipline. You're so focused on not making mistakes and always having everything be really exact that I think once I transitioned into having to take on more and more work, I really had to kind of work with that perfectionism aspect and have it not be a negative motivator, but more like an aspiration to have my work be valuable, but maybe it's not always perfect, and it's okay to mess up, and sometimes you uncover even cooler things by messing up.
Isn't that great? Sometimes you can just uncover cool things just by messing up, right? And yeah, and to that end, yeah, another thing that's sticking out for me and what's been said already. So, Annabelle, you mentioned that your graduate experience especially was very cutthroat, right? And I'm hearing things about too, like like from Ayla, the reality of that pre-med life, right? So so Anna, let's start off with you. Like, how did you navigate and decide to get out of that cutthroat environment, that competitive environment, and then move on to something that you really wanted to do?
It was a really big decision. I didn't want to feel like a failure in any aspect, and like I think fresh out of this the decision for like a year or two, like even talking about it, like I didn't want to talk about it. Now it's a lot easier to talk about because I think I see how successful I could still be, even without a PhD. Even though it is kind of rough for lately because like this year, a lot of like my friends that like went into the same programs like are graduating and like going into their career. But from the alter perspective, like I have been in the industry for like 3 years now, and I feel like pretty well adapted. So I think it's hard to not compare yourself to others, right? But at that time in my life, like it just, for what I wanted to do post graduation, it didn't really make sense. Like I could have stuck it out for 3 more years. I ended up joining a lab that was a lot less toxic. But my PI was like the dean of the college. I never saw him. I could have just ridden it out and gotten a PhD, right? If I just write it out for 3 more years. But I think I've learned a lot more in my experience in industry, but I don't regret that decision at all. Yeah, so it was rough. I enjoyed the classes in grad school. It was very challenging, but there was a lot of times where I felt like the people I was surrounded by just didn't have like the same perspective that I did, especially coming from Cal State Long Beach, like a primarily undergraduate university. It's very different than all of my my fellow classmates in grad school coming from like Yale and Harvard and crazy places. So yeah, I definitely don't regret my decision. It was very challenging. I mean, it was a challenging decision to make, but at the same time, I knew I could do it. I just knew that I didn't want to. So yeah, it was rough. But there's always challenges to overcome, and that's life. And I felt like at Long Beach, even, like there were so many places or times that I felt really challenged and I had to overcome things. So yeah, I think that answers your question.
Oh, that totally. Yeah. I was like, tell me more. Right? We can be here for another hour. And then let's go. And then it's honestly like people need to hear these stories. Like we don't talk about these enough because I think what happens too is like we're so in the thick of our classes. Like everyone's busy, everyone's stressed, faculty, students alike. So it's really good to come to this space and just like talk things through. Let's go with Ayla and then Natalie.
Yeah, so challenges in undergrad specifically, I think I'm sure folks on this panel and a lot of students at Cal State Long Beach, we also have to have jobs, right, to support ourselves. I put myself through school. So finding a balance between classes and my jobs was really challenging at times. Right, because jobs, you can't always control your hours. You got to go in, when they tell you sometimes. So it's not quite as flexible maybe as your class schedule. So that was really tricky. And I actually had some people discourage me from pursuing this major because they said, you're not dedicating enough time to your coursework. But I just had to do what I had to do. I had to pay for those books, had to pay for that tuition. So you had to get it done. So that for me was the hardest part. And then of course, also trying to have some semblance of a life outside of work and school was tough. And so I actually took 5 years to finish my undergrad, trying to spread out my course load a little bit. So I could do both of those things. But yeah, for me, that was probably the toughest, was just trying to juggle all those different things at the same time.
Then Natalie can go ahead.
I guess challenges, like everyone else has spoke about. Having a biology degree is or working on that major is pretty difficult. So, the classes, I try to stay with people that, are in the same major as me that helped with my degree, with getting my degree. And then I was lucky enough that I was part of like RISE, where I got paid to do some research during my time at Cal State Long Beach, and also while I was doing my master's. And some challenges also, like, even though I really enjoyed research, when I did my master's, I did also do teaching. I was a teaching assistant there to see if am I going to want to be a teacher maybe in college? So, that was also challenging, but also, having to do my research project. So it's just like a balance of everything. So to try to figure out what you want, but it's also important to try a lot of different things because you never know what you might like.
I think that's a good segue to our next question. And looking back at your journey, what support and preparation contributed most to your success? We can go with actually, let's go with Claire, because Claire, you mentioned something really interesting, like problem solving and communication. That was something that you picked up that you wouldn't expect to pick up, in liking science classes, right? And that mentors were especially important. And I was wondering if you can speak more to that, and then we can go around the room.
Yeah, so I think probably where I spent the bulk of my time in college was at the satellite room, which is in the science building. All the physics people would kind of hang out in there, and we'd work on physics homework together and math homework together. And I think all that time of talking through problems with other people prepared me so much for work later on. And meeting up with my friends at the library before an exam to talk about math stuff. The class real analysis in particular, I bonded really significantly with some of my friends over that homework. It's kind of like your first hardcore proof class that you take as a math major, and it's good for your character and you learn a lot. So I think, yeah, that really helped my problem solving skills. I feel like I can learn anything now if I put my mind to it. And I can do it with other people, which is so, so valuable when you're working on a team. And yeah, I had some of the best mentors. Shout out to Diana Gonzalez. She was great. She was my mentor, along with another person, but she always was there if I needed a question answered. And I had a lot of other friends that were a little bit older than me that they were always there when I needed to know what classes to take, or I just felt confused about my life in general. And then my major advisor, Dr. Lax, was a huge help too. And I was not sure if I wanted to go get a master's degree or a PhD or like just go into industry after I was done with my undergrad. And he gave me some really, really good advice. That he said that if you wanted to, I'd bet on you, but you don't have to, pretty much. And what I took from that was that when you make big decisions like that, you should do it because you want to, not because you think it like sounds good on paper. So I had to do a lot of soul searching to think like, what do I even want? So I ended up deciding to go into industry for a few years while I figured it out. And I had a lot of perspective on like what skills would be good to build onto my career now that I don't think I would have if I would have gone straight into a master's degree. So going forward, if I'm considering that, I have a lot more insight and a lot more confidence that I can really build my own path if I want to.
And then so let's go with Ayla.
Sorry, having technical difficulties here. Yeah, so as far as preparation, I would kind of like to echo what Claire said, which is basically just take your time. I always have told my mentees over the year, like grad school is always going to be there. So it's not going anywhere. So definitely make your own path. Don't rush into anything. So there's not really anything specific I would say as far as preparation. Just take your time and look at what you value, and that will really help guide you as far as what kind of career or grad program you want to pursue. And also, again, to echo what Claire said, my mentors were everything. In my post-bac program, Lisa Cligg and Beth Eldon, who I think has recently retired, were a huge help for me, and they really just gave me a chance. I came in there with no research experience. So sometimes it just takes someone, giving you a chance. And then of course, Deborah Fraser in my grad program was incredible. So just finding your people is a huge help for sure.
Yeah, and some of the people that y'all mentioned are just like some of the most lovely people that I've personally worked with, over the years at Cal State Long Beach. And let's go with Natalie.
I guess I would kind of echo the same thing. I feel like we all kind of echo the same thing, but yeah, I feel like it's always good to also if you want to jump to the master's or not, or decide on what you're going to do. I feel like it's good to take different opportunities that come up, try them out. Like I said, like I did teaching assistant, I did graduate assistant, and helped set up labs. I worked in a lab, doing my master's and undergrad. I feel like it's, now's the time while you're in school, if you want to go to a hospital, maybe work there, or just try out as many different things. I feel like that prepares you later on your job and whatever you want to work somewhere that you really enjoy too, or you really enjoy what you're doing. So I feel like now's the time to explore different stuff and take opportunities, hear out what different people say, and talk to your professors. I also worked in Dr. Eldon's lab. That's where I started. So just try to get mentors at school, or talk to people that are ahead of you, as everybody else said.
Thank you for that, Natalie. And then now, Annabelle.
All right, definitely echoing what everyone's saying, like mentors, taking advantage of research opportunities, et cetera. But I think the turning point for me in undergrad was the fact that right when I was going into organic chemistry, like I had gotten like decent grades before that, right? Like A's or some A's, mostly B's in like my science courses. And I was really scared about organic chemistry. So I went to the SAS Center and I got a tutor, which I'd never done before. I just wanted to be very prepared. I ended up I mean, it was very helpful to have a tutor. It really kept me on top of like being prepared to go to those sessions, especially because I was paying for them and I was only working part-time, a million different jobs at the time. So that really, I think, set me up for success. I mean, becoming friends with people in your classes, especially like my best friend of all time that is still my best friend today in chemistry. Like we just went through all our classes together and it was very supportive environment for me to stay motivated. Also just looking for opportunities off campus. Like I had an analytical chemistry internship with an analytical environmental lab off campus, which is an experience for sure. And I think I became the most successful later on in undergrad because I had so much experience outside of campus with chemistry, but then taking classes, I could see the connection from my classes to the work I was doing in research lab, etc. Unfortunately, in chemistry, I have great mentors, but they're all male. So I didn't really have that female perspective from a mentor that I've always really wanted. But regardless, Dr. Schramm is an amazing research professor. I did great work in his lab and he was always so motivating and I could always come to him for anything. And I still talk to him to this day. Dr. Menorah, because I was in RISE, like he was also like my dad, I guess, on campus. Like I could go to him for anything, even though he had like a 40-page to-do list at all times. It's probably like in the hundreds now. He would always make time to talk to me about anything. So yeah, building those connections are really important, especially post-graduation, like staying in touch. Like Claire said earlier, staying in touch with your people that you graduated with or connecting with people who graduated before you or after you. I think it's really important. It will really open doors and opportunities and definitely taking advantage of like LinkedIn and things like that. So that's, yeah, my path of what supported me in my journey.
Awesome. Thank you so much. Now, next question is to go along with that, how would you advise students to prepare for a career in science and math? In your opinion, what skills or experiences would give students a competitive edge when applying for their jobs for graduate and medical careers? And I think we'll start off with Natalie, because you mentioned at least a couple of times where, for students to try different things. You personally have worn different hats within the realm of biology, which is a very big field. I was wondering if you could talk more about that.
Yeah, like I said, I did research, I teached, I graduate student, set up labs for, the classes that people take. I feel like that's all gonna set you up for your field. Like I said, if you're gonna go try to enter into like a research lab, it's important to know the basic science. So, understand your classes, and working in a lab gives you the opportunity, to see, can I run a, basic science, like run a gel, like stuff like that they look for in jobs. Or, I feel like anything you do kind of sets you up for, what career you're going to pursue. At least that's how I felt, because I felt like, I worked in a lab and that gave me, I feel like a lot of guidance. So when I actually got like a job, I'm like, oh, like I can do this, I've seen this, I've learned this before. This makes sense. Like it wasn't like I was in this like foreign, like, oh my God, I'm lost, Yeah. So at least that's my perspective. Like, and then like I said, like I taught and I was like, is this something that I would like to do? And I do that too. Like when I worked in research too, I would teach like the incoming college students or high school students. So give them an opportunity and chance to, teach them what I learned from somebody else. When I was in the lab, I learned from a graduate student. So, I feel like that prepares you for your career.
Yeah, and I appreciate that because sometimes, like especially in your undergrad, you're like, man, why am I titrating this thing like 5 times? And you're like, there's a reason. And then let's go with Claire.
For me, I think a combination of trying things out was really important because I think I assumed that maybe I would go into aerospace at one point, and I did an REO where I did some aerospace research, and I discovered that I am not the biggest fan of aerospace. And then I did another REO where I did probability research, and I discovered I like probability, but maybe not probability research, which was really valuable. I tried being a lead for essay one time. I discovered maybe I didn't like teaching so much, and I wouldn't have found these things out unless I put myself out there and tried things and asked questions and got nosy. The other thing I will add that if you are interested in data analytics, I highly recommend learning SQL and or Python before you graduate. I did not, and I had to learn those things on the job, which all worked out well, but it would have helped a lot in the beginning if I knew that I wanted to go into that field and had learned those skills, but definitely not something you can't teach yourself eventually. And it's hard to plan ahead when you don't know what you want to do. And hindsight's 2020, where you look back and you think I should have learned this thing while I had the time and wasn't working full time. But I guess what I'm trying to say is you should try and see what you like and plan ahead accordingly for your skills. But also, if you don't feel too bad because it's hard to know that until you get there.
Awesome. Thank you for that, Claire. And really quick, for those in the audience, can you explain what the REU is in case folks don't know that acronym?
Yeah, sorry. It's a research experience for undergraduates. So you go to a different university for a couple months during the summer, and they pay you to do research in a little team setting. So for the probability one I did, I went to Oregon State University for a few months, and I got to walk around in the forest. And then when I wasn't doing that, I was researching probability stuff, random walks, I think I did. Random walks, something with geometric trees. It's been a minute, but it was a really cool experience. If you have the chance, they pay for you to stay in the dorm and get free food too. And I highly recommend either doing an internship or an REU during your summers, just to fully take advantage of that time. It was extremely valuable and made a lot of cool friends too.
Thank you. And let's go with Ayla.
Yeah, so I think we may be a little biased because it sounds like we've all had similar experiences on this panel as far as getting our hands dirty in industry a little bit before or after grad school. But I would definitely recommend just getting out of the classroom and maybe even getting out of academia a little bit to see what options there are outside of the university setting. For me, after I finished my master's, I went to work at a nonprofit, which is very similar to an academic environment. So I kind of thought I want to be a lab manager and that's it. That's the end for me, right? I knew I didn't want to get a PhD. But after leaving that job and going into industry, I was like, wow, there are so many things I can do. So I got to work in business development. I did technical support. I did technical marketing. So if I can't speak to medicine, but if you're looking to go into a research or technical role, definitely look for opportunities in industry. And if you find yourself in a sort of open environment, definitely talk to those around you and see what their experiences are. Because I learned so much from, senior people in other departments outside of R&D who had life sciences background, and learned a lot from them about what opportunities there are out there outside of the lab, right? Because maybe even if you love research, you don't want to be in the lab forever. So there are a lot of research support and research related roles that are not strictly wet lab. So if you like science and you like research, but you don't want to pipette for the rest of your life, there are definitely a lot of options. So yeah, just talk to folks, and you'll learn a lot.
Thanks for that. I'm like, I don't want to pipette for the rest of my life either. Thank you. Let's go to Annabelle.
All right. Good question. I don't know. I feel like everything obviously what everyone has been saying, but I think it's also from the perspective of I know how challenging it is to be accepted into like REU sometimes, or different kind of internships with industry. I say if you like definitely apply. I think it's there's no point in not applying. Apply for as many and as often as you can. But if you can't get that experience, then I definitely, what we've been saying, like join a research lab on campus. Like these professors need you. They want to teach you. They want their grad students to teach you. I think it's the easiest way to get your foot in the door in research and science, and have that competitive edge, because a lot of people do go to university, you get your degree, but you have no experience in terms of outside of like a lab classroom, and lab classrooms can be pretty like funneled in, right, and not super necessarily helpful sometimes in industry, or elsewhere. So yeah, I think definitely doing your research into what kind of job you are interested in, what kind of field. And I think you also have to be really open-minded about the location you want to work. Los Angeles is not the best place for a scientist. I will tell you right now, it is challenging to find opportunities in Los Angeles for biologists, chemists. I don't know about physicists and mathematicians, but in terms of the choices, it can be rough sometimes. So I think being really open-minded about like San Diego, huge biotech industry, Seattle, Boston, like these places with giant amounts of companies that really are willing and eager to teach you things, I think is really important. And really researching the titles, these roles that you are interested in applying to, because they're kind of are what your experience leads you to, like understanding what they're looking for, what these words mean. Are you interested in what this job like is telling you that you're going to be doing? Because I also see a lot from the few companies I've worked for, people apply because you have that science background, but you don't really have any clue of what you'd be doing on a day-to-day, which is challenging sometimes because job roles are vague at times. But I think doing your research beforehand, reaching out to people with that title at that company on LinkedIn, like messaging them, people are more than willing to answer your questions or meet with you even if they're a stranger. But definitely these connections that maybe went to Cal State Long Beach would be more privy to talking to you too. So yeah, definitely doing your research will definitely make you more competitive, especially when it comes to fresh out of college jobs.
Thank you. That's like a whole nother workshop. Thanks for the idea. Okay, so thank you for sharing your experiences so far. And it's really super valuable. And I think, like the students, the audience here, like have a lot to learn from the wealth of your experience that you shared with us so far. So now, please tell us about your current position. What aspects of your job do you find most rewarding, and what do you love most about it? And we'll start with Ayla this time.
That's a tough one. So most rewarding, to be 100% honest, the most rewarding is when you do an experiment 99 times and then the 100th time it finally works. There is no better feeling than getting that thing to work. So aside from that surface level reward, really just the joy of learning. Every day I get to learn something new. I've only been at my current position for 6 months, but I've been working in labs for almost 10 years now, and I've already learned so much new stuff. So again, for me, it allows me to be very easily entertained because things are always different, always exciting. And on top of it, I get the added bonus of being able to hopefully contribute to drugs that actually make it on the market and help people. So I also really enjoy collaborating with people from other departments. So we also have neuroscience, right? Computational biology. So getting to work together in this kind of open environment for me is also, again, rewarding because I get to learn from all these different people and learn about their experiences and their expertise. So just lots of different things happening all the time. And yeah, I really enjoy that.
Thank you for that, Ayla. Let's go with Natalie.
So for me, I really enjoy, I guess the best thing about my job is that I'm actually generating a treatment for a specific patient. So every day, when we go to work and I complete our job, it's like I know that this treatment's going to go save someone's life or at least give them the chance. So that's probably like the most thing that I find so rewarding that makes going into work every day like I find joy in that, that I got this opportunity to, still work in the science field and, I get to help out. And especially with patients that are like, they've tried chemo, they tried radiation, and that's not working. So this is kind of like, another last resort opportunity if they can try it out and see if it works. So for me, that's what I find most rewarding at my job.
Thank you, Natalie. And let's go with Annabelle.
Okay, mine's going to be I'll try to be brief, but a little bit of background. My first job right out of grad school, I actually decided to join a small biotech startup company, which was only 9 people at the time. We were in our A round of funding, which means, I mean, I won't be that descriptive, but we had like a certain amount of money to to buy all the things we needed and maintain our people for a few years, right? Until we had to ask our investors for more money or get other investors, et cetera. So this was in 2019. Yes, startup costs, thank you. And we were a team of 9. It was very crazy. We had a few projects, but they were really exciting projects. And there was one project which I will always find the most rewarding from this job was that I could see the results of like a peptide that I made, and we did a mouse study, and we could see after the injection that our peptide was highlighting like just beautifully around this tumor in this mouse. And it was like this mind-blowing experience for me because it was like so rewarding and so exciting, right? So fast forward like a year and a half, COVID happened. A lot of things shifted in our company, and we did not get our B round funding, so we kind of had to slow down. I got laid off. I got a new job at a contract manufacturing company here in Los Angeles, which was a great learning experience, but definitely not where I wanted to be. I was thankful when my team, who had downsized from 9 people at the time to 3, wanted me back when they got acquired last year by Regeneron. So now we have not all the funding in the world, but we have a lot more funding, being able to work for a giant pharmaceutical company that's really excited about our technology. So am I on topic still? Yes, so most rewarding. So being part of a small team within a huge company has been really exciting. I think the most rewarding thing for me is actually always like kind of mentoring and like talking to students. That's always been really important to me, which is why I wanted to be a teacher a while ago. So I still tutor and I still mentor and I do talks like this. And I think that's kind of really exciting to me because I get to share like my passion for science and the unknown and learning new things every day with like a fresh mind who could also teach me so much as well. So yeah, my current position, I just have a lot more money to do a lot more bandwidth of what I was able to do before, a lot more fancy instruments, which are really exciting, higher throughputs. I mean, I'm always my own worst enemy. My boss is very relaxed all the time, and I just like put all these things on top of me to make me just a better scientist and more motivated to like help the bigger cause, right? Because being in the research and development stage, I'm working on projects that are like 5-10 years out from potentially being a therapeutic, which is really exciting. And my company has we have so many collaborations right now because we're a fresh team and they want us to do so much because they're excited about us. So yeah, I have a unique perspective in that realm, but it's always easy, or it's not easy per se, but it's you always find something that you're really excited about. So that's all that matters.
Dang, I'm excited for all of you. Let's go with Claire.
So in my current position and in past ones where I've worked at e-commerce companies, there's just so much information and people on other teams have questions all the time. And my job is to give them the best data-backed advice as I possibly can. So sometimes people want to know, how did we perform last year as a company, or like what product performed the best? more high level stuff, and sometimes it's a smaller level question where we'll do an A/B test, which is kind of an experiment, but on a website where you have 2 versions of your website and you see which one will drive the most traffic or make the most money or just overall perform better. And then you have to see if it's statistically significant and choose that one at the end of the day. Finally using more math. So that's always good too. So basically my job is taking all of the information that's stored in the computer and trying to condense it in a way that says, yes, we should do this, or no, we should do this other thing, and explain to people why that is, and keeping it really concise and simple and broken down in a way where we have really clear actionable steps from whatever I find. I think the most rewarding part of my job is, besides solving cool problems, is making the lives of my coworkers hopefully easier. There's a few times where I've automated things that people have had to manually pull data for, and now it just automatically populates every morning, and they don't have to take the time to do it, and they can focus on other things that are more worth their time. And that makes me really happy that I can make their lives easier, especially people that I work with a lot of really cool people, and it's really cool to not only like work on helping to make this product that I really believe in a lot, but also just working as a team and getting closer as a team has been really, it's been really fun overall. And let's see, what else? Yeah, I think that's probably what I love most, is just helping my coworkers and making things more efficient.
Awesome, thank you so much. And then this is our final question, and we'll move on to Q&A. And I think this is a nice, like, kind of like moving on question, you know, like how do you move forward with your career? Would you say that you work in a male-dominated field? And if so, why would you choose to stay in this field? Would you say there are opportunities for women in your field? And I totally feel this question because I'm like, there's so many times I'm in a room and I'm like, wow, I'm the only one that looks like me. So let's go with Annabelle first.
Oh man. All right. Big question. I mean, being in chemistry, definitely male dominated, unfortunately. Fortunately, my team now and sometimes before is female dominated, which is cool. Especially because my CEO, my highest level director, is a female, and this whole company, or this whole platform, was really like based off of her PhD work at Caltech. So yeah, she's been a huge, role model for me, definitely. I don't know. I always like to think that it's getting better, and it will get better. And I think that's why it's really important that people like us stay in our field, right? Because we serve as that face and for younger generations. And like, I'm a chemist. Like, I don't look like what you think a chemist would look like, but I am. So yeah, just keeping your grit in this male-dominated field. It's hard, but it's definitely worth it. I think one major point also that I'll always remember during grad school was that they had us raise our hands like for orientation if our parents had a bachelor's degree, or if our parents had a master's degree, or if our parents had a PhD. And I was baffled because this room of like 80 new chemistry grad students, like 85% of them raised their hand with the PhD parents, and I'm like, what? Like, my parents didn't even go to college. And I think it's like that click in your mind that like you are doing this and you better keep doing this, because we need like more diversity and more different perspectives in our fields in science. So yep.
Thank you, Annabelle. And let's go with Claire.
I think the first couple jobs I had out of college, I would definitely say those are male dominated, but more recently in my current job, it's pretty female dominated where I am, which is pretty cool actually. I think that I've been really strict with myself on, if something isn't working for me, I know I need to make a change in my life and make a change in my career. And I think because I've been determined to do those things, it's really paid off. And I've really been able to shape my career and my job to be what I want it to be. So I'm really lucky to do that. I think it does kind of help in like the startup-y tech world because it's easier to change jobs slightly more often. So I've had more opportunities to network and kind of find where I'd fit in the best. So I think overall, I would say it's male dominated, but I wouldn't let that stop you from knowing that you can find somewhere where you feel like you can fit in and you don't have to put up with things that you don't want to put up with, for sure.
Thank you, Claire. And let's go with Natalie.
I think in my field, I wouldn't say it's male dominated. I feel like we have about an equal amount. Maybe when I started, it was a little bit more male dominated in biology, but I feel like for the most part, there is a lot of females. So it's not totally male dominated, which is helpful, of course, because, you know, seeing more females gives encouragement to women and to go into the field, like you can do that. So yeah, I don't feel like it's male dominated.
Cool. Thank you, Natalie. And Ayla.
Yeah, so similar to Natalie, I wouldn't say in a lab environment or R&D environment that it's male dominated. But if you're in biotech or biopharma, for example, if you work in a business role or a sales role, administrative technical support, in my experience, those are definitely male dominated. But certainly space for women, lots of opportunities there. I think that is changing. For example, in my previous role, my team was primarily women. So we had a lot of younger undergrads coming into our internship program. It was all women, including our business development interns. So I think that the tides are shifting. So it depends a little bit. And certainly the roles closer to the top executive levels I find are more male in general.
Mm-hmm.
But again, that's definitely changing. And I'm lucky that the company that I'm with now is very, very diverse. So I think things are moving more in the right direction.
Yeah, and I'm glad you said that because a lot of times too, we don't think about, you know, what leadership positions will look like. We're trained for certain positions. We're trained for, you know, entry level or maybe like middle manager or something. But what does that, you know, top level leadership look like? So I'm really glad you brought that up. So with that, we're right at 6 o'clock. So I think we are. It's a good time to segue to Q&A. Okay. See, we have one comment here. Just want to say this is really impactful, not a question, but a comment about how impressive this panel of CSULV and CNSM alumni are. Go Beach. And thank you for sharing your stories about your journeys. Awesome. Let's see here. And then Sonia, do we have any more questions from the audience?
Nope, that's the only one that came in. Anyone else want to make a comment? You know, feel free to drop it in the Q&A. I can also allow you to talk.
Oh, well, let's go. And now they're popping up. Okay, this is from Jessica Lopez Cruz. How did y'all get into research? And anyone can just jump right in.
I got into research through I actually applied to the winter research program through HSI STEM at the time. This is a while ago. I don't know if that's still a thing. Oh wait, yeah. And yeah, I got accepted. I didn't have any research experience before that. I had decent grades, not really, they weren't that great. And I got put into a biochemistry lab with a new professor, Dr. Schwanz. I worked in there for a semester. They paid me like a little bit hourly. It was a really good experience, but I also learned I did not want to do biochemistry research. So I took organic chemistry that same semester, and I really liked organic chemistry. And then I just approached my organic chemistry teacher, even though he was very intimidating, in his office hours. And I was like, hey, I'm really interested in research. He's like, here's this paper, read it. I read it. I came back to him, had some questions, had a conversation, and that's what led to him accepting me into his lab to do research. And I actually worked in his lab without being paid until I applied to the RISE program, got accepted in that, and then was able to get paid. So that was my journey.
Other folks, would you like to chime in as far as how you got started with research?
I can go. I started research, like I mentioned, while I was a community college student. I applied to Bridges to Baccalaureate at Cal State Long Beach, and I worked in Dr. Alden's lab. So that's kind of how I started out, seeing if I really liked research, and actually I did. So that's why I continued to work in Dr. Alden's lab when I transferred over to Long Beach, and then I was a part of the RISE program. So that's how I started.
Awesome. Yeah, we have there's a lot of great programs as far as like getting your foot into research. And let's go with Ayla or Claire, would you like to add?
Yeah, so I also started in research through Long Beach. So again, through the biotech program, which I think is still running, the stem cell program. So I'm not sure. So as part of that program, you take a year of courses, and then you get matched with a lab at certain research institutions where you work full time. So during my coursework for that program, I worked in Dr. Sai's lab. So you similar to what Natalie was saying, and Annabelle, you kind of matched with a PI. And so I was working in Dr. Sai's lab for a year, and then I worked at UCI in a lab full time. And as part of that program, you got paid, so you received a stipend. So I was able to dedicate myself to that, and then that kind of, allowed me to realize that, like, yeah, I want to pursue research. And I came back to Long Beach again for my master's degree, and then went from there. So started doing research there.
Cool. And then Claire?
So in my summers, I tried to focus my research there when I wanted to go do that. So the first one I did was called RIPS. It was at UCLA. It was kind of different from traditional REUs because they made little teams of students, and each team got assigned to a different company to do research for that company. So I did some research for the Aerospace Corporation, tracking how CubeSats, which are like little cube satellites, how effective they would be at getting rid of debris in space. So we made a little program in Python, and that was cool, but yeah, didn't really like aerospace too much. And then I had applied to that just online and had gotten in. And then the next summer, I applied to a few different REUs, and I ended up choosing the one at Oregon State University. Can't remember the name of it now, but it's every summer at Oregon State University. And they had you in pairs, and you and your partner would be paired with a professor at the university, and you'd help them with their research. And that's the probability one that I did that I liked a lot.
Cool, thank you. Yeah, I mean, and if anything, like folks, like let this be a lesson as far as like internships and research opportunities. It's a good way to find out what you want to do and what you don't want to do. Okay, so next question is actually for Annabelle. How did you come across a startup biotech company? Yeah, we'd like to know. Yeah.
That's a great question. So I had a lot of time to apply to jobs because I was still in my PhD program, right? So I really searched around. I wanted to stay in LA, but I did apply to a lot of other city places as well. I applied to, I think, around 200 jobs at the time because I didn't hear back very quickly. I think I found out about Indie Molecular at the time on Indeed. So the two main platforms I applied for jobs was Indeed for sure, as well as LinkedIn's general searches and stuff. So I definitely found them on Indeed. They do this weird thing where you put all your resume information in, and it made my CV look really weird. I remember that. But yeah, they contacted me, and yeah, I just definitely use those two platforms to look for jobs and apply.
Thank you. And this is for the entire panel. How long did it take to find the right position that worked for you?
Well, I'll start here. So for me, it was more what was right for me changed over time. So when I finished grad school, I thought I wanted to stay in academia because some people in academia kind of vilify industry. So I thought industry was like the big bad wolf, and academia was where I was at. So I went into that, and it was a great fit for me at the time, and I learned a lot. And it was kind of a nice bridge to where I am now. So it's just kind of a bit of trial and error, and if what you want changes over time, that's totally fine. So for me, it took, I guess it technically took a few years. But again, just because as the direction of your career changes, what's right for you will also change.
I love that so much. And I think this is a good segue to this next question. And perhaps someone else could take this one on. I'm going to graduate next semester, and I was wondering what were some things you looked for in your first job out of college when applying?
I think for me, I don't know if this was right or wrong, but I really tried to see if I liked the people. And I had a really good connection with the hiring manager. I met her at a career fair at Cal State Long Beach, actually, and we had a really good conversation. And then I ended up working on a team where I had a really, really, really good manager who was a really good mentor for me. And I know someone I can still go ask questions if I need like career advice or anything. So I think, and he was really good at like holding my hand a little bit because I didn't know how to code or anything yet. So, and kind of, I got thrown a little bit into the deep end with some stuff I felt I wasn't ready for, like 6 months into the job. And I think, so I guess I would say that a combination of some, like a good team that will both support you and force you to grow maybe before you feel like you're ready. And also somewhere that is clear about like salary bands and like what your career path is going to look like. You don't want to feel like they're tricking you or hiding things from you at all. So I think somewhere that's good about being transparent and you can tell that you'll have good mentorship there. I think those would be the most important, I would say.
Yeah, the people that you work with, especially in your first job, it's super crucial. And I was wondering if folks have something to add to that.
Yes, I have so much to add. So definitely
Go
like
for it.
What Claire and Ayla were saying, your team is so important. These are the people you work with every day, you learn from. So I was down to my top two choices were the small biotech here in LA or this large pharmaceutical company up in Seattle. I went on site for an interview there. I've met man after man after man who were just I don't know. I couldn't see them as like these supportive mentor types that I wanted out of my first career. Especially because they would like ask me like intimidating questions and like I kind of got the vibe that they like expected me to answer incorrectly and like it was just like an uncomfortable situation. So yeah, I vibed really well with this Culver City startup company. Even though they sat me down at this big table and all 8 of them at the time were like around it, like asking me questions, but they made me very comfortable. At the time, I really wasn't thinking about something that's very important, which is what someone else mentioned, like moving up, like your mobility with the company, right? Because I got hired on as a research associate, which I'm sure you'll find that job title around so many different industries and science. Basically, you're starting at the bottom, right? you're an associate, and they could have you do whatever they need you to do. But I think one thing in research, which I found really helpful was the fact that you could kind of mold, like what Ayla was saying, like you could kind of see what you like to do and take on more of that responsibility, or you see what you don't like to do and say like, draw a harsh line, like I want to focus on these things, which I think was easier to do at a small startup company rather than big pharma or bigger companies, which kind of just have so much work for you to do, right? That you're kind of just preparing sample after sample and you're not really maybe engaging as much as you want, or maybe that is what you want, like repetition, become really analytical. But yeah, I think more than anything, definitely your team, but definitely know where and how you can move within your company, because it's so hard. It's hard to move up. Like you get sometimes 3 to 5% raises a year and people think that's awesome, but that's like nothing in the big perspective of maybe where you're starting.
It's like inflation.
Like exactly, it's less than that. So it's like you have
a whole
to
nother
value
workshop. There you
yourself,
go.
but you also have to come in with the perspective that you were starting from the bottom. So you have to be realistic with that, but definitely know like where you can go from there. My company just had a change in titles. So I can be a scientist now, because before it was R&D, associate R&D specialist, senior R&D specialist. And because I don't have a PhD, right? That's another thing in pharma that's kind of intimidating. Like, people with PhDs are in a different track than you, which is very frustrating sometimes, right? Because like, you could be working 10 times as hard as someone else with a scientist track, and they're making 20 times as much as you. And it's just like this frustrating thing, especially when you're fresh out of college. I mean, it's different when you're fresh out of college, right? Because maybe you don't have as much experience. But I think definitely seeing the mobility within your company, seeing that your company is working on these initiatives that change how things are very segmented in, like, people with a bachelor's degree, people with a master's degree, people with a PhD. So yeah, definitely knowing how your company like values you, and seeing how you can progress within the company, and not undervaluing your worth, because you're very, very valuable. So definitely another huge thing in science is that once you learn a certain set of skills, if you're not happy with your pay, not happy maybe in your role, with any role or anything with your role, you could always move to a new company where you now have these skills that this company is really excited about and they need. So you could really, you have to build these negotiation skills, and it's very tough, but it's possible. So yeah, stay motivated.
That's some real talk. Thanks for that. I was like, I needed that. Jeez. Okay, so with this next question, let's start off with either Ayla or Natalie. How is availability for a remote job in your industry? Well, this is really important, especially like low COVID, right? All the things happened. I'm interested in computational sites and looking for remote jobs. Any suggestions on looking for remote jobs within this industry?
I'll start off. I do want to add real quick one thing to the last question. I would say also, when interviewing, ask the people you're interviewing how long they've been at that company to give you an idea of how high turnover is. If the turnover is super high, like, run away. But to answer the current question, I think there's a lot of opportunity for remote jobs if you're in any kind of computational biology or computational science. Like,
Yeah,
I think post-COVID, like, that's, everybody is kind of expecting it. So at least a hybrid role. So I think even in my current position, I have a lab-based role, but I'm only expected to be on site 80% of the time, which means I have the opportunity to work from home to do data analysis, things like that. So definitely lots of opportunity for remote work there.
cool. Natalie?
I mean, in my particular job, there is not, because we are expected to be on site. Of course, in my particular department, in other departments, I believe some of them are able to work from home, but us, we're expected, since we're working with, patient cells when they come in,
Yeah.
we kind of like, you have to be there.
There.
Yeah, so that's not really available.
Got it. And then Annabelle and Claire, do you want to add anything to that?
For me, after halfway through my first job, I went remote, and I've been remote for ever since, fully remote, and I love it. So definitely, like, if you're into e-commerce stuff, there's plenty of opportunity there across a lot of different roles, unless you're working anything warehouse specific. That's kind of the only one where you might have to go in, or like human resources specific. But other than that, if you're coding, there's a lot of flexibility. And even I've worked at a company where we had no headquarters. Everyone was just remote before. So there's places to go.
Got it. Thanks for that, Claire.
I think it's hard to be remote as a scientist, but definitely something you can negotiate if you like are able to do like data analysis from home. I think it's really important to negotiate and establish that with your supervisor before you get hired. You could also kind of get a sense of like how they'll be as a supervisor, and get more perspective about the responsibilities and roles that you have to do.
Great, thank you. And then the next question is: have any of you signed up for CSULB's Beach Nexus yet? I haven't heard of it, so I'll sign up. You would all make wonderful mentors. So so we'll I guess get more information about that maybe after the webinar, if we can get that sent out. And I think this is probably the last question, and I think it's an amazing question. How could elementary school teachers encourage their students to get excited about science? That's my research. I work with middle school students. Any of you, please take it away.
So I haven't
Ayla.
worked with students that young before. Like Natalie, I was a TA in grad school, so the youngest I worked with is undergrads. But for kids, I mean, again, I just get their hands dirty, very basic experiments, and kind of show them how science, relates to their real lives. One experiment that I remember doing when I was a kid, I was in science camp, and we extracted DNA from strawberries. And I thought that was amazing. So just simple experiments, anything like that, I think would be really engaging.
And then Annabelle.
One thing I know or I've recently learned is that my company, Regeneron, actually has a program that supports giving teachers like experiment ideas,
Yeah.
Or like even money to support like buying the necessary things for those experiments. So I'm pretty sure any big pharma company probably supports similar goals. So definitely knowing your resources and looking into things like that. And even like CNSI, which is California Nanosystems Institute at UCLA, actually does a program that teaches or that brings teachers on campus to actually learn new experiments, really cool experiments, and gives them all the tools they need to take that back to their classrooms. So just knowing your resources and looking out there, because everyone is very supportive of teaching the younger mind science.
I have to jump back in really quick, actually, to plug my previous company. So Zymo Research, where I used to work, they're very involved in student outreach, and they'll probably provide free reagents if there's experiments that you're interested in. So if, I can definitely provide relevant email addresses for that if that's of any interest.
And Claire or Natalie?
I still remember in 4th grade, we did this thing where like we would switch classrooms, and the teacher next to me was, I guess, knew a lot of science stuff. And I remember we made an electromagnet one time, and I thought magnets are so cool. And then when I got to college and I learned about magnets more, it really cemented that belief that magnets are cool. But yeah, I think it was cool because we each got a little setup and could do it ourselves instead of just like watching someone else do an experiment. I like that I got to do it.
And then Natalie?
I mean, I just feel like as long as it's some sort of experiment that can be exciting for the kids to see, I feel like that would be beneficial, because I feel like a lot of times people are like in science, or kids, they're like, science, that's boring. like as soon as you say that, they're like over it. Like, yeah. So I feel like as long as they can come up with some cool experiment that the kids can, see or do themselves, I think that would be good to encourage kids to stay in the science field or join the science field.
Yeah, I mean, just to echo like what everyone's saying, yeah, science camp, awesome. And then often companies do have professional development opportunities for teachers. It's something certainly to look into. There's professional development funds typically at individual school sites where they'll actually pay teachers to get professional development, and then they'll like partner with a company to do that kind of professional development. I know my son, he goes to a math and science like academy high school. So then like there's always that kind of opportunity as well. But yeah, like getting kids' hands dirty, just like get in there. I ran a science camp last summer, and it was in an urban farm. So that's certainly coming up, urban farm science camps, where they get to learn about compost and all about the chemistry of compost. So it's pretty cool. Okay, and I think that's all the questions. So so with that, folks, thank you so much for coming. Thank you so much for listening to all these super awesome stories. I am so honored to moderate this panel every time we have it, and like the stories are amazing. And Sonia, thank you for organizing this. Happy to do this